a second batch that we made beforehand. It's going to be pulled out so we can get this all into a 50-minute presentation. And then we're going to show you how to make the sauce, which we have all set up here as well. So we can do that all together. And we'll be posting the recipe. I'm not sure if it's posted yet for all you guys to have, just in case you need to jog your memory once run rolls around. Adeena is going to start you off with pasta. I'm going to help her. She's much better at it than I am. And then I'll teach you guys how to make the sauce, which is my own recipe that I perfected on my friend's guinea pigs in college. So, sure.
Okay, so first you're going to start with...
All right.
Okay, so first you're going to start with 2 cups of flour, and you're going to pour it onto your clean surface. And then you're going to make a well inside of it. And you're going to, okay, so you're going to make a well. And then you're going to want to pour in 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a half a teaspoon of salt.
I'll cameraman so you guys can see exactly what she's doing.
And then you're going to want to beat your eggs.
So in the eggs, we have 4 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks. You can mess with the ratio a little bit. This is what we found works best. The first time we made it, the noodles tasted very eggy and doughy. We found a couple techniques for making them taste better, so we'll teach you guys those as well.
Okay, so after you beat your eggs, you're gonna pour a little bit of it into your well.
You're not supposed to do what Adeena's doing here. It's supposed to stay in the middle, but she over poured here.
And then you'll just, 1 second, I'm just gonna fix this a little bit. You wanna help me?
You've lost.
Do you wanna help me?
What do you want?
You can help a little bit.
Here, I'll mix.
Okay.
All right, so what you want to be doing is you want to be kind of mixing these in the center while pulling in extra flour from the outside of like the walls here. We've lost some egg to the outside, but it should still work. And if it doesn't, thank goodness we have a backup batch. Basically, you want to keep doing this and pulling. You can keep fixing the walls with your hands on the side like Adeena was doing. And also a reminder to wash your hands before you start this, given the current pandemic. We wouldn't want anyone. Yeah, so we're going to add a little more egg once it starts to get clumpy like this. And you just keep bringing in extra flour. You can pull off the flour from there, and you just keep mixing. And you want to get it really well incorporated until we'll show you in a minute. It's going to take us a few seconds to get there, but it's important. All right, so right now we put in about 3/4 of our egg, and we're going to try to get this to look like a little bit crummy and incorporated with most of the flour. So we want to keep mixing this until, and now I like to use my finger. In the video we watched, the guy used the fork, but we found that the finger provides more control for us amateur chefs. So we're going to keep mixing until it's fully done. That's fine.
I'll just keep it moving.
All right. So yeah, we're going to keep adding flour once you're kind of satisfied with your mixture. It shouldn't look smooth and doughy. You want it to be like a crummy mess. Yeah, add the rest of the egg.
No, not the rest.
Yeah. We're going to save about a tablespoon of flour for the end.
No, it's egg.
Or sorry, egg, my bad. Oh, there's a casualty on the home front there. All right, at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and start mixing all my flour and egg together. This is going to get it to like a nice crummy consistency. You can use your hands, although I don't recommend it. It's very messy. But sometimes, you know, when the going gets tough, put your hand in egg. So we're going to keep mixing until we get the consistency we're looking for, and then we'll add in the final egg. The final egg.
Take over now, Devin.
That's fine. You'll take over from me.
Yeah.
So you can see that the egg is starting to mix with the flour, but we're still seeing that flour coating on the outside. It kind of looks like a crinkle cookie, but it's yellow. And you can see it's starting to kind of incorporate partially, but not entirely. We're getting close to the point where we're ready to add the rest of the egg in. Just gonna scrape around the outside. Get the rest of the flour incorporated. So once it stops catching most of the flour on the outside, like it has here, it's kind of a doughy consistency. You want, I can speak. I'm gonna kind of try to ball as much together as Adeena was reminding me. You make an impression in the middle, although I'm failing pretty miserably at that. We have our hole sort of made here, and Adeena's gonna pour in the rest of the egg. And now's the fun part. So we start mixing. You want to make sure you have extra flour on the outside here. It helps with the kneading process, because as you start to kind of activate the gluten, activate the pasta dough a little bit, it becomes more and more sticky as you kind of go on. Also, if you don't have a marble countertop at home, I recommend using a plastic cutting board or something along those lines. It tends to stick pretty nicely to the marble, which is a relatively non-sticky surface in general. So you want to kind of avoid that. So Adeena's going to take over for me now and is going to show you guys how to knead the dough. You want to get as much of the dough that is currently stuck to your hands off as possible. I think that's as good as I'm getting. So I'm going to go wash my hands and Adeena's going to take over.
I recommend for this part taking off any rings or bracelets you have, but yeah. Okay, so you'll sprinkle some flour onto your mixture, and then you'll just start like pressing it in, and like it'll get pretty sticky, so you'll just add some more flour. And then if like you have dough stuck to your counter or your surface, you'll just scrape it off with the fork that you were using to mix the dough together.
Can everyone hear us?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up if you can hear us. I'm going to try to speak a little bit louder.
Okay.
And just a quick note, right now we have started our water boiling for just to make sure that we expedite the process here. If you are not in a rush, you don't have to start it boiling that early, but because we're going to try to get this all done in an hour for you guys, we are making sure that everything's prepped and ready to go.
I'm just moving.
Okay, so off camera, you have me, Rabbi Rosenblatt. Just want to talk to you about why milk and dairy is very traditional for Shavuot. So there are actually many, many reasons for this. One of which is actually that the 7 weeks that count up to the holiday of Shavuot are a 7 cycle is a cycle of purity in the Torah. And so the idea is that it is 7 times 7 cycles of purity. And so the white of the dairy is both in halachic terms and also in, I think, aesthetic terms, very reminiscent of that purity. And so the dairy of Shavuot represents a certain kind of purity that we wish to express in our food. There is another piece of the equation, which is that when the Jews sat at the foot of Har Sinai, they didn't know which foods to eat, which animals, or perhaps more specifically, they hadn't yet learned how to do the ritual slaughter of the animals to make them kosher, and therefore they were in a position only to be able to enjoy the milkers. Now, I particularly like watching Adeena knead dough. She's done a lot of tala, and she has really good technique. I'll just pan here for a second to show you that she's got her own sourdough starter, so in the absence of yeast.
My dad is on Facebook Live simultaneously with Zoom, so unfortunately we're not going to move the Zoom camera, but it looks like a mason jar full of really old milk, so yeah. You're not missing out on much. While Adeena continues the knead, I'm going to just start showing you guys how to prep your ingredients for the sauce. So you might not be able to see my face, but I want to make sure that you guys can see the cutting board. Now's a good time for a quick note. Leora is currently selling Cutco knives, which is what we have here. I highly recommend them. And she's selling them over Zoom for Cutco to raise money for a charity. So if you're interested in talking to her about it, there's no super intense commitment involved. You can give her a phone call at 604-812-9349 or email her at leorarosenblatt@gmail.com. And if you don't remember that, you can send an email to Riley Rosenblatt or call him. So on the topic of knives, it's really, really important when you're prepping ingredients like these to have a really sharp knife. It really helps you speed it up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to chop our onions and garlic. First thing we're going to do is chop our onions and garlic because that's the thing that is going to take the most time in the pan. So for the onion, the way I like to chop it is I like to cut the tops off, and I like to. I'll show you how I like to dice them up. Very important as well that you cut on par. A lot of the ingredients we're using are what are called davar harif, which can temporarily, which are like kind of more intense food products, which have the ability to make your kitchen unkosher very quickly if you're not careful. So cutting vegetables on par is always recommended because it really helps with keeping the kitchen nice and kosher. So we're going to de-skin the onions here. I don't know if you can see, you can double check. That's not the camera, it's on Zoom.
Yep. Okay, bring it real quick.
So we're going to take off all the skin for these onions. Oh, there goes Siri. So that's one half of our onionry done. I like to split it in half. It really helps get everything off quickly. It'd be a little bit wasteful for the sake of time here. I apologize. Onions. Missing one. So for this recipe, we try to approximate. I usually eyeball it. You'll see what it looks like at the end. Unfortunately, it's going to be hard for people to smell, but you can generally eyeball it kind of depending on what your family likes and what their personal preferences are.
Can we talk about your apron? Show us on the apron here.
Oh my God.
So much to do, so few people to do it for me. Now, why is that your apron?
Okay.
I'm going to quickly remind my father that he's not running the Zoom this time, and that we're not going to follow his regiment of command.
I'm done with the dough.
So we're going to quickly turn back to Adeena while I finish preparing these onions so that she can show you what the dough looks like and what the next steps for that is.
Okay, so by the end of it, your dough should just kind of be smooth and like moldable, I guess. So now I'm just gonna turn.
It should be turned.
Oh, and if when you press in it, the dough like goes back to like its original state, then your dough is ready. So now we're just gonna wrap it in saran wrap and make sure there's no air bubbles that can like come into your dough, because if it does, then your dough could get ruined pretty quickly.
You don't want to oxidize your dough, so you want to make sure that it's completely sealed within the saran wrap. I got it. Yeah, I'm just gonna cut it for you. Cut.
Yeah. So I usually double wrap it just in case.
We think that this one's gonna be okay though, because it's pretty well sealed.
Wait, no, I'm gonna do
Or if you're gonna double wrap it anyway. When I cook as well, I like to have a waste bucket next to me that I can put all my food scraps in. All right, so Adeena's gonna stick that puppy in the fridge. Can you reposition the camera?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal. You need to see the camera. All right, so when you cut your onions, you want to leave the root bit, the hairy bit on the back. It really helps cut. So what you want to do is incision halfway through. That's very hard to do with a dull knife. And then you want to just slice it across like this. And then we're going for like a finer kind of chop here. You can kind of, depending on the texture you want, adapt this as you see fit. So I'm just going to fly through these really quickly. So we're gonna keep chopping, get all our onions going, and then once all our onions and shallots are chopped, we're going to put them into our pan to start caramelizing. The more kind of golden brown they are, we have a term GBD in our house, golden brown delicious. The more like kind of that look they get, the better it's going to taste, the more flavor you're going to build up in your pan. So the more time you have, you just kind of leave it on there. Also, the sharper the knife, the less you're going to cry from your onions. Although I'm still getting pretty mangled here. I really like this big cutting board. My dad hates me for it because I always leave it messy, and then he has to wash it. But I like it a lot because it's very easy to chop multiple ingredients. Excuse me. Just setting the eyeballs off on. So for shallots, it's the same thing. You can chop them in half. It gives you more stability on the cutting board, and then you just give nice long incisions through and over. Next one. So I like my onions nice and small in this. It provides flavor. I don't really love the texture in pasta. It's just kind of soggy and no fun. For the mushrooms, though, I'm going to leave them a much coarser cut because they tend to shrink in the pan pretty quickly, and they also provide a nice texture and contrast with the fettuccine pasta we're going to be making. Woo. These are giving me a run for my money. So I'm probably going to actually leave a little bit of this onion out because I think it's going to be a little too much to get properly done before we run out of time today. And while I continue chopping the ingredients, Adeena is going to, as soon as my dad returns, is going to teach you how to roll the pasta.
Okay.
The onion crying is real. I guess no matter how good your knife really is, the onions still get you. All right, so we're gonna get our frying pan. I'm holding this, so I like to have my equipment set up as well. So we're gonna scrap this frying pan. We're gonna just start with our saucepan. It's nice and deep. That's like for scale. My hand fits pretty well in. Wrong way. So I'm gonna put it on high just to get my butter and olive oil incorporated. So first things first, I'm gonna grab my olive oil, and hopefully you'll be able to see here. I'm putting in, I'm eyeballing around 2 tablespoons of olive oil. It's gonna seem like a lot of fat to put in initially, but you're building the base for your sauce. You can kind of make a roux here. It'll help thicken your sauce. So I just add a little flour as well with the butter and the onions. But we'll add that in a little bit later on. So you're putting in about a 1/4 cup of butter. give or take a little bit. So I like to cut it into cubes so it melts faster. So that's what I'm doing over here on my milk cutting board, which you can't see, I don't think.
Just let me know. Move your camera over here. Okay. All right.
So I have my my heat on high. As soon as I get my ingredients in, I'm going to be turning it down to about a medium high heat. I just want everything to melt pretty quickly.
Very slimming, huh?
Yeah, this is definitely not a diet-friendly meal. So if that's what you were hoping for, I'm sorry to disappoint. All right, so we turn that guy down.
Are we ready to do pasta?
We're almost there. So we're gonna get these guys in. We'll catch up with you in a few minutes. I'll show you what I've chopped up, and Adeena's gonna start on the pasta rolling right now.
Okay, we're over here. We actually have this pasta roller, and that's how they perfected this. And here is the real star of the show. Adeena.
Okay, so cut your dough. Your dough should set in the fridge for about 10 minutes. So we made some dough beforehand. So cut your dough into 4 pieces. And then you want to wrap these back up because they will dry out if you don't. It's a bit of a long process. Okay.
Mabel.
We're just dealing with a dog. She's in here to eat all our pasta. It's so delicious.
Okay, so now I just start by rolling it out a little bit just to thin it out in order to fit into our pasta roller. I don't know if you can see. You want to go check?
So our pasta roller is right here. Adeena's going to show you how it's done. And once you get the pasta rolled out and cut the first batch, we're going to go back to the ingredients and we'll show you guys.
Okay. So there are 7 settings on here, so I just run it through each one like 3 times, I guess, depending on the. You want to flour everything, and like in between each roll, you want to flour your dough again because it gets pretty sticky.
The last thing you want is like hardened flour chunks inside your pasta roller. It's like the easiest way to kill it. Excuse the noise as well. I'm just pounding out some garlic over here while we wait for Adeena to
And you always want to catch your dough a little bit early because it will stick together as it folds onto itself. So now that I've rolled that through a couple of times, I'm going to switch the setting to a lower one. So I've moved down to 6, and I'm going to roll it through again. I think we can go to
All right, so we're going to get back to the ingredients now.
switch the
Zoom camera. You're on the Zoom camera primarily. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just bruising some garlic with my knife. You want to use the open palm with like this part of your thumb if you haven't done it before, which I'm sure most of you have. And I usually like to go like pretty heavy on the garlic for this sauce. It is like a cream sauce that's supposed to be, you know, decadent to say the least. So once you have it bruised, it also helps it kind of cut a little bit nicer. So we're just going to cut as much of it as possible. I put the garlic in second because it burns a lot easier. I'm just going to do coarse chops and then I'll come back through with my knife to get it a little bit finer. But you do want the cloves to be like pretty finely done by the time you finish. So I'm kind of happy with. She's not done rolling.
Yeah.
So the rolling process does take pretty long. When you go to a pasta roller, it'll have various settings for your thickness, and you want to kind of take it down to the paperiest. Otherwise, your noodles are going to end up really, really doughy and chewy and weird, and they kind of feel like you're slurping like beef jerky or something like that. That's not what you're going for here at all. You're looking for a thin pasta that's going to be coated with all the flavor we're working on.
You have a question from Facebook Live. Why don't you use a garlic crusher?
We do have a garlic crusher.
I prefer cutting it, but that's just how I was changed, how I was trained, or how I taught myself to cook. But that's the college apartment in me. That is that's just basically of the opinion that if you have a knife around, and for those of you who don't have garlic crushers, we wanted to make this as accessible as possible. I believe that you can probably make some pretty delicious dishes without a garlic crusher, and you just spend a little bit more time cutting. So the thing is that we have Thai red chilies here. I like adding a little heat to my sauce. You want to use gloves when you're preparing this ingredient. It's very intense, and like my fingers have been in a lot of pain after making this dish before. Yeah, I definitely.
You can find these kind of gloves.
Yeah, the gloves are definitely a scarcer commodity. So you want to choose like a nice sized pepper. That guy's pretty big. Just rip off the top right there. And then here comes the interesting part. You want to scrape this down the middle so that you can open it up. And the seeds in there are like the spiciest part. So you want to just take your fingernail and kind of just scrape them all out, or as best you can. If you have a couple of seeds, it's not the biggest deal. Yeah, I try not to add any of the seeds.
No, I mean red pepper.
Yeah, if you want it spicy, 2 chilies is good. If you want it not as spicy, 1 chili is more than enough.
Adeena, how much chili do you think is the right amount for your palate?
I don't know.
1 chili generally has worked well for everyone I've served this to. That's all you need. It looks like a very small amount, but
I would go with half a chili. For Ashkenazic Jews, maybe more for people of more Middle Eastern palate.
All right, so I'm gonna ask my dad to move the So I've finished incorporating. They're kind of translucent, my onions and garlic. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of flour to thicken up the roux. And probably a little bit more than that even. So just gonna be a good base for our sauce to be nice and thick. I'll turn it down a little bit as well. Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit more flour. So as you can see, it's probably enough to coat like the entire top. And it's giving our onions a much yellower color. That's what you're looking for. The stuff to kind of use. Another thing, just to comment, because I'm watching Adeena make pasta out of the corner of my eye as well, is you don't want to let your pasta fold into itself too much. Otherwise, it's going to get stuck together and you're going to have to repeat the rolling process. So here I have a hefty amount of garlic and chili. I don't know if you can see the chili, but it's going in. It's going to give a red, like kind of golden color to your sauce, which I quite enjoy. So we'll let this caramelize a little bit further. We're going to turn down our heat a little bit.
And we're going to show what the rolling pasta is. Really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, here we go. We're coming back to Adeena to see her rolling pasta. She's become quite the expert at this. Where's my knife?
I didn't take your knife.
What's happening to the Zoom?
It's just a chat. So Adeena, how many times do you have to end up rolling out that pasta?
I usually put it through like 7 times
7 times?
because there are 7 settings.
I see. You just move through that. No chopping mushrooms, just hear that sound. Notice how David uses the technique. He uses his knuckles, very skilled with this. We haven't yet had to go to the hospital to keep his fingers in good shape. I'm very impressed at Adeena's pasta making skills. Unfortunately, this is not really on my diet. Unfortunately,
This isn't on anybody's diet.
COVID has not been kind to me in the weight gain category. And I have to resist this. Exercising temptation.
Here, you can turn it so that the road. So you want your mushroom strips to be kind of wide and pull apart like that. It just helps the sauce give it some nice color, texture, dimension to whatever you're cooking. Also, I keep going back and forth to my pot, but I saw our dad, we went to Lee Valley to purchase tools today, and they have an actual gadget that stirs your pot for you, so you can be prepping ingredients and have a robot stir your pot.
Notice how Adeena's reflouring on a regular basis to make sure it doesn't.
Also, she's aerating the dough too by moving it back and forth.
So now I'm switching to the pasta cutting part of this, and I don't know if you can see, but we have hangers hanging in the background because, well, they're sanitized hangers. Because as I'm chopping it, we don't want them to stick together, so I'll hang them up on like the bottom of the hanger, and then as the pasta will dry out, but that's okay because we usually eat dry pasta.
Adeena, can you just give people the warning if they have a dog?
And if you have a dog, she might eat it. Mabel ate some of ours. So.
It was hanging down too low, and Mabel got some. And we just discovered that Mabel wasn't trained not to eat hanging food. She won't eat food that she knows is on the table, and she won't eat food that she knows is yours. But if she doesn't know it's yours, she figures it's fair game.
So just coming back to the ingredients quickly, I like to use shiitake mushrooms. I find they provide a unique flavor and texture to the sauce. I just like them.
What do you do with the stem? You take the stems off?
I de-stem them before I came on camera, just to prep some time. So I have a nice batch of mushrooms here. I'm gonna just.
Yeah, for those people, I'm gonna post the recipe in the chat and probably also have it at sharedcetic.com.
So the bigger the pot you have here, the better it's gonna turn out. You want to get your mushrooms to like a rubbery consistency before you add in your cream and other ingredients. If you find you don't have enough, fat or whatever, you just kind of keep adding in. It's definitely not a slimming recipe, but it's really yummy. So save it for once a year.
Okay, so we're going back to Adeena to watch her cut the pasta. So this is Adeena's technique. You have that when you bring the pasta sort of back towards you, I guess, in the cutter. Huh? Wow, an interesting technique there. Okay, back to.
I'm just mixing together all my ingredients. This will kind of turn into about half the mass that's currently in the pan, and then that's how you know you're ready to add your milk. I'm gonna let that hang out for a minute. I turn up the heat so that my mushrooms will kind of release water. They're pretty water intensive. You're not scared. Just finishing off my mushrooms.
If you're wondering out there, there's a lot of work for some pasta. This does not taste like what you get from your store-bought dry pasta. It really is a different experience, much more luxurious. That's why we call this dining in while eating out.
Also, one thing I'd like to note is that the pasta making specifically is really kid-friendly. It's a little messy, but if they get something on their hands, you just kind of double the recipe, and you can afford to waste a little bit. And like, you look up a pasta making video, and you'll see something similar to what we had, and it's really fun, like for siblings or whatnot to kind of join in.
Yeah, I'm going to show Adeena hanging the pasta up. Here's the pasta hanging. All right.
So everything's gonna continue to cook once you put in your wet ingredients to the sauce. So right now I kind of have a mushy mess of onions, shallots, garlic, chili, and mushroom. I think I might have said mushroom. But it's gonna kind of all come together as soon as we pour this in. It's gonna take on a little bit of color.
Getting hot in the kitchen here. That's much I will tell you.
All right.
So what's interesting about Shavuot is that Shavuot is the holiday that sort of has the least official symbols, right? So, you know, Pesach has the matzah, and Sukkot has both the sukkah and the lulav. But Shavuot, you know, really, if you ask a lot of people, well, what's the mitzvah of Shavuot? People are going to say cheesecake. And so cheesecake is only the sort of
That's next week's episode.
That's next week's episode. But this is just a modern, Ashkenazic version of it. The milk food becomes very much a part of that. And I think that speaks to the fact that the kitchen is very much a part of the ritual of the holiday. You need to speak this up.
All right, so I'm adding in the milk here. This is actually heavy cream, in case it wasn't fattening enough with like the quarter cup, half a cup of butter. I'm adding in most of this carton. It's gonna help thicken up, especially with the flour. And as you can see, it's kind of taking on the color of our ingredients, turning up golden. And as this kind of reduces, you'll get a really nice thick sauce with like, you know, a lot of different textures. May not look great this second, but once we season it and taste it, I assure you it doesn't disappoint.
Okay. The pasta is now hanging over here. And Adeena, when do we put the pasta into the water?
Well, I usually do it after I'm done rolling everything else.
So you're going to roll a second batch now? You're rolling out the second half of
Yeah.
it?
No, this is not the second half of it. It's a quarter of it.
A
So
quarter.
I cut them into quarters
You cut them into quarters, okay?
because it gets really thick and long.
Okay, so bring it over here. I'm saucing it. So with the sauce here, I have it on a high heat. As you can see, it's kind of reducing. Let's see if we can get the camera in there. It's kind of reducing around the edges here. It's boiling. It's the highest heat the stove goes. So just to intensify the flavor, I'm going to add in onion powder, enough to cover the top pretty much. I'm going to add in garlic powder, a little bit less on that front. And then I'm going to add in salt and pepper to taste. I generally eyeball it, but like you don't want it over peppery, but you don't want it under either. And then we have our salt over here. So that goes in as well. And now is right around the time that I'm also going to add my Parmesan, which I pre-grated as well. I don't like using the like pre-grated. I like using it from the triangle if you can get it, because it has a much better flavor that way. So that goes in. And now it's just kind of, you keep tasting, and if it needs more garlic or more salt, you add that in, but you want to let it reduce as much as possible. Adding in flour at this stage is dangerous. If you're trying to thicken it up, it can be done, but you'll end up with little flour pockets, and it's kind of not ideal.
Can I move your cutting board?
Yeah. Done. Just put everything. That's just what.
Oh, they're making peppery.
So you really want someone here like stirring this consistently until it's got a consistency you like, and then you want to just keep it reducing so it gets even thicker. So Adeena, as soon as she's done rolling this, I'm going to start taking the pasta and pulling it off the hanger and getting it in so that you guys can see what that's like. Also, I have a sage here. I'm going to chop that up very quickly. And just add that in. You really don't want that much. I'm going to use like 4 to 6 leaves, depending on their size. And you want to just kind of, I like to bruise it first, so I twist it a little bit, and then I remove the stems, get it going in the other direction a little bit. You want to add the herbs towards the end. The oils in them will kind of just release into the sauce slowly. If you're feeling fancy, you can kind of fry it in sage butter, but I think there's enough fat in here to go the distance.
Okay, so I'm just want to go back to Adeena. I'm so impressed with your pasta rolling skills. So how many times has this been through already, Adeena?
6.
This is 6th
No,
time?
this is the 7th time.
This is the
Been
7th.
through 6.
And then after the 7th, you cut it? You
Yeah.
put the cutter feature on?
Yep.
All right, so Adeena's almost done.
So I just want to say that this pasta roller used to belong to your grandfather. But then your grandmother said, well, he shouldn't be using it. So I think it was David who said we should have it here.
So the pasta strands are well floured. If you can see it, they come off my hand. Adina doesn't want me to mix them together, but what she doesn't know is that she floured them so perfectly that they.
Yeah, but you also have to split them in half. That's why I let them dry.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull them off. We don't have that much more time. So in a perfect world, you want to let these dry for between 10 to 30 minutes. Once they get like feeling hard and you're like, oh my gosh, my pasta's ruined. That's kind of the perfect time to put them in when they stop being super malleable. I've turned my heat down to like a medium low here. If you can see, when I dip my wooden spoon in, it sticks to the back. That's kind of what you're looking for. It's not like a super drippy. I'll show you with a metal spoon because that's what you want to taste and check with. So a metal tablespoon over here, you dip it in, sticks to the back. So you know it's gonna like adhere to the noodles. And I like to taste it with some of the ingredients. So you go from the bottom and just kind of shake that out. Make sure you get a little onion and chili and sage and whatever. And yeah, I'll let you know how it is. It's too hot to taste.
Oh, too hot to taste. All right, we're going back to the pasta roller.
That's good.
It's good. Not too much heat, David.
Look, enough to tickle the back of your throat, but not too much. So I'm gonna put in the first batch. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So what Adeena has shown me is that if you pull down on the noodles like this, they split in half. So you have some more reasonable length. I'm actually gonna go ahead and lay these out on the counter. Like so. And I'm gonna split each batch again so that they kind of twist nicely around your fork. So we'll take one kind of half of this at a time. So without losing as many noodles as possible, they go in. Nina, did you salt the water yet?
I think I did.
Okay, so you want to salt your water pretty generously. There's already olive oil. You can see that green stuff floating on top. Not mold, I promise. And then you want to mix these around so they kind of keep separated from each other. At this point, we're going to turn our pasta sauce off so it kind of starts to set a little bit. Hey Siri, set a timer for 1.5 minutes. Okay, your timer is set for 1 minute and 30 seconds. So our pasta's been in for around 30 seconds already, so we want to let it cook for a little bit longer. And you'll see how it turns out.
So are you guys actually going to make this for us for Shavuos?
I don't know, it depends on how well we're feeling in terms of the diet. All right, so Siri's telling me that there's about a minute left. So now's a great time to go get your noodles off your spoon.
Shelly says she thinks you should have a cardiologist on call when you have this.
I agree with Shelly. So I have a nice bowl here. Great serving dish for the pasta, so we'll put it right next to there.
No, you just put it straight into the
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it has to come out of the sauce eventually. So you want to have your tongs on hand at this point. We have about 12 seconds left on our timer.
How does it feel? Can you feel it? With the tongs?
They feel very flimsy. They kind of feel like ramen almost. They're paper thin. You want to let as much of like the water drain off, but it is also important to have some pasta water going.
What other sauces would you put on this if you weren't going
You could do a rosé,
which is what?
as simple as taking a little bit of cream and butter and adding it into a.
All right, but what if I didn't want to do cream? What if I wanted to?
You could just make a regular tomato sauce, add in some basil and some fresh herbs and garlic. So here I have my pasta. It's really important. You want to kind of twirl it within your tongs. Very easy to lose fettuccine inside a very thick sauce like this. Once you kind of finish twisting, you want to lay it back into your bowl like this. And you can finish it with a couple mushrooms on top. That's pretty much what you're looking
Put it on the counter so I can feature the bowl. How would you garnish it?
I would put a little fresh sage on top. I can show you.
Some flakies.
Like so. I would also wipe down the edge, but leave it in it like that. We'll have the rabbi taste on camera for you and violate his
Okay, here we go. Wow. Amazing. Really outstanding. I feel like I'm at a restaurant in Rome where I have no health insurance for my cardiologist. But that's really, really amazing. Wow. That is a fantastic job. Well, I want to thank David and Adeena for doing this. I'm going to be posting the recipe into the Zoom chat, and we will get it onto the Shared Tzedek website. As well, I think we're going to have an edited version of this video as well on the YouTube channel. And also just want to say that their sister Leora is running a fundraiser through her Cutco sales for a orphanage in Jerusalem, and so you can contact us to participate with that. And we want to thank everybody for joining us, and have a great night. You can talk a little bit. Shut up.
All right, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week, where we're gonna do a cheesecake, which is Adeena's specialty. So I'll be learning lots. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Shared Tzedek sponsored Zoom call.